as of right now, I have had my fully electric Nissan Leaf for just over 2 years. And it has been a very interesting 2-year learning experience, switching over from my 15-year-old Subaru Legacy that was really starting to fall apart to buying the Nissan Leaf and making that leap to a fully electric vehicle. I remember sitting in the dealership looking at Patrick when we were going over the paperwork to buy the car and thinking, am I making a horrible mistake? And I was scared. I was so nervous because nobody I knew had a fully electric car, and it was very new technology. It still is very new technology, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to manage that switch. But now I can say, 2 years after that initial period of really high anxiety, that I'm actually very happy that I made that decision. There are absolutely really strong pluses and minuses to having an electric car, especially right now. There's not a ton of charging stations, so the majority of people who have electric cars charge at home, which is what I do. I come home every night and park my car in front of the tiny house and plug it in. I use the power station that's right next to the tiny house, and it actually worked out so well, because if I had a traditional house, I probably would have had to hire an electrician to come in and put in a power charger just for the car. But since we live in what used to be an RV park, or kind of still is, we have the power charger stations right next to the house. So I was able to take the charger for the car and plug that in, and I just charge my car overnight. It's what they call a trickle charge because it takes a long time. But as long as I don't completely drain the battery and I plug it in, you know, like 6, 7, even 8 o'clock at night if I get home late, it's usually fully charged by the time I get up to go to work the next day. So it has really worked out great in that way. So that yellow plug is the dog bone for the tiny house, and then this gray plug right over here is the plug for my car. So it works out perfectly that we have these two different plugs on the this power tower right next to the tiny house. There were a few different things that I was super concerned about when I decided to buy a fully electric car. One of them was being able to charge the car, and that worked out okay, just charging it overnight. Sometimes if I have to drive a little bit farther, like if I have to go somewhere after work, I have to figure out another way to charge my car. About a year after I bought my car, the church that's 2 blocks up the road from where I work put in a charging station. So I was able to use that a couple times, and that was super helpful. One of the downsides is that I was hoping public charging stations would start to spring up more quickly. And I think for the last literally year and a half, the rest stop on the parkway a few miles away from us has had a charging station that was put in, but it has had yellow tape around it saying that it's not ready. And I don't know what the holdup is or why it hasn't become available yet, but it's literally every time we drive past it, I look at it to see if it's up and running, and it's still not. So it's definitely been a lot slower for there to be more public charging stations, but I do fine charging my car at home and going to work every day. It's really mostly just a commuter vehicle for me to get to and from work and run errands. When I have to drive farther, like if I have to do some sort of training for work, I'll usually just borrow Patrick's car. We will switch cars. He takes my car to work and I take his car somewhere that I have to go. He has a Jeep Cherokee, so gas-powered vehicle. You can drive that as far as you need to and just stop and get gas. I definitely don't miss having to stop for gas and thinking about that during my work week, oh, do I need to get gas today or can I make it another day and wait? I just don't like running errands and having one more thing that I have to think about stopping and doing is slightly irritating to me. So I love the fact that I just come home, plug it in, and it's ready to go the next day. I also feel like we have saved money not having to buy gas. The increase in our electric bill was not substantial when we bought the car, and if I was more of a math person, I could sit down and like hash out the numbers, but that's not me. We just kind of kept track of what was happening with our electric bill, and it did not jump substantially. It really wasn't even much of a difference that we noticed. So I had seen from other people's videos that the comparison between the amount of money that you would spend on gas versus the amount of money that you would spend on electricity, you were definitely ending up saving money with the electric car. So that made me really happy. But there are also some increased costs that you really need to keep in mind with an electric car. So now it is a toasty 26 degrees at 11 a.m. and there you can see, so we started out at 70 miles for the battery charge, and I drove a total of 25.7 miles, and that took the battery down about 50%. So most of the roads that I was driving on were like 45 to 50 miles an hour. It wasn't the highway, but the slower you go, the happier the Leaf is. So yeah, eventful day all in all. Things were learned. No more inspection sticker for me. That's why you can see right there, they scraped it off. Just another errand that I don't have to worry about running when I have the electric car, so that's nice. I have never been a person to take my car to the dealership to get work done. We have a mechanic locally who is excellent that I really, really trust, and anytime I had to take my Subaru in to get work done, I knew that he was going to be completely honest with me and that he was going to do it at a really affordable rate. So one of the things that I was struggling with the most when I was thinking about getting the electric car was I knew I couldn't take it to him for most service. I mean, tires and stuff like that would be fine, but really any kind of maintenance that you have done on an electric car can't be done by a regular mechanic. You have to go to somebody who's certified. So that means that every time I get work done on the Leaf, I have to take the car to the Nissan dealership, and there's only one person that works at the Nissan dealership that is the Leaf certified mechanic. So I always have to ask and make sure, is he definitely working that day? Because he's the only person who really knows what to do with my car. On the plus side of that, electric cars don't have as many moving parts. You don't have to do an oil change on an electric car. There are fewer things that are going to break, so it's definitely less overall maintenance, but when I do have to get maintenance done on the car, it costs more than it would have for me to get work done on my Subaru. So it's really a balancing act, but I think between the savings from not having to buy gas all the time and just the fact that I drive less overall with the electric car, I'm sort of forced to drive less because of the shorter range of the car, but I also think differently about driving. Instead of running out to the store to go get something because I don't have whatever I need, I just think, okay, well, on my way back from work or on my way back from the gym, I'll stop and pick that up. So there's no additional miles that I'm driving. I would have been driving anyway. So it makes you think a little bit differently because you have to conserve your mileage and conserve your battery. And that is going to mean overall less wear and tear on your car. Slight inconveniences in your daily schedule, but over the 2 years I've totally accommodated for that, and it's just a normal part of my day now. It doesn't bother me at all. There is my 2015 Nissan Leaf, and it has officially been 3 days since I charged it. This is the first time that has ever happened in, let's see, over a year and a half that I have owned the Leaf. That is because of the thing that we talk about called range anxiety. And I can tell you, after buying my first electric car, range anxiety is a very real thing. Right now, I'm on my way to work out, I'm going to the college. This was actually where I went to school because they have an electric car charging station and I can go over to the track and do my workout. What I really want to see is how much of a charge I can get during the hour or so that I go to do my workout. In the beginning, the limited range of my car was really hard to adjust to, and if I'm totally honest, the first probably 2 or 3 weeks that I was driving the car, I was having the worst buyer's remorse, to the point where I was contemplating going back to the dealer and like begging them to take the car back. I was really freaked out about the whole situation, and I felt like what I was expecting from the car in terms of the range that it was able to drive was not the reality. It was much shorter than what I expected. I thought that I was going to be able to take my car and drive it up to North Jersey and just charge it once about halfway up the state, and that's just not realistic because highway driving drains the battery really, really fast. So I've never been able to do that. I always take Patrick's car. But that was something that if I had known that, I don't know if I would have bought the car. If I really understood what I like to call leaf math, where the car sort of has one idea of how many miles it could drive, but in reality it's always less. I think if I fully understood that, I'm not sure if I would have bought the car or not. I feel like I'm leaning toward I probably wouldn't have, but since I did, and I got past that period of panic where I wanted to try to return the car and took the time to get to know my range and how to manage that and how to plan my day, I got used to it. And I feel like in the end, the benefits are outweighing the cost. And I think it really ended up being a good decision for me at this point in my life. When you're doing research on an electric car, there's a term that you're going to start to hear called range anxiety. And I'm here to tell you that range anxiety is a real thing. I mean, I was driving home sometimes when my battery was getting a little bit lower, like sweating, hoping that I was going to make it. And this really depends on the model of car that you have and the year car that you have. My car is a 2015, and it has something that they call a lizard battery. And what that means is that this was earlier technology when we first started to have electric cars. And heat and cold really strongly impact the way that your battery is going to function. So I know that there is a significant difference in range when I drive my car in the summer versus when I drive my car in the winter. And when it gets really, really cold, my car is not happy. So in the summer, when my car is fully charged, it'll usually be somewhere around 100, maybe 105 miles that the car is telling me that it could drive. That totally depends on how fast I'm going, what the road conditions are like, if it's uphill, downhill, or flat. All of those things come into play. But overall, I know that in the winter, when my battery is fully charged, it's going to tell me it has about 70 miles of range. It's really not a true 70, especially if I go on the highway. I usually go back and forth to work, and it will tell me when I get home I have like 25 miles left or so. So I can't do any serious road trips in the winter. And like I explained before, I will either change cars with Patrick if I have to do extra driving, or I always just kept it in the back of my head that I could rent a car if I needed to like go on a road trip or do some sort of substantial driving. I could always just rent a car for 2 days, and that would solve that problem. In the 2 years that I've had the electric car so far, I haven't had to do that at all. I've always been able to just borrow Patrick's car. And we both agreed that we feel like in the future, this is the direction that things are probably going to move. As electric cars improve, the range and the batteries get better, I think what you're going to see for a lot of two-car families is that one car is electric and one car is gas or hybrid, because then you have the longer range with the gas or hybrid vehicle, but you have the flexibility and the financial efficiency of the electric car and all the other benefits that come with that. It's a very good blend to have one of each right now. As the technology gets better and there are more charging stations, that could change, but I think moving forward, for a 2-car household, that's really going to be a good situation. There's a couple of strange things about having an electric car. It's really quiet. It doesn't make a sound like a traditional engine. So the car actually has, I think they call it a whirring sound, so that when you're going at a slow pace, if there are pedestrians in the area, it makes a sort of noise. But I've had to be really careful, like in parking lots and things. A lot of times people will just listen to see if there's a car coming, and you don't hear an electric car. So you have to really keep your eye on people who are walking, because they might just walk out in front of you, not even realizing that there's a car coming. One of the other things that I really noticed the difference of between my Subaru and having the electric car is that my Subaru, when the heat would get going, I mean, it was blowing a lot of heat in the winter. So it was great. I would turn my thermostat all the way up and just be like in my glory. But with the electric car, the heating and cooling system are very different. It's not taking heat away from the engine the way that a traditional car does. So even for a car that was this affordable, as Patrick likes to call it, it's the poor man's Tesla, it has heated seats and a heated steering wheel. And the reason for that is because the heating system is not good. At least the heat that blows on you. It takes a long time for it to heat up, and it doesn't blow as much hot air as a traditional car heating system would, where they're pulling heat off the engine. So having that heated seat and heated steering wheel is kind of vital for being able to drive and be comfortable.